Hey there, this is Fred Posimo. I'm the host and producer of the Make Money and Have Fun show, where I'm sitting down every single week interviewing authors, speakers, coaches, consultants, entrepreneurs, investors, millionaires, billionaires, you name it. We're going live every single week, and you don't want to miss an episode. And one of the ways that I'm able to put this show on is through what I use to produce this show, which is Anchor.fm. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest and fastest way to make a podcast out there. Let me explain. First of all, Anchor is absolutely free. They don't charge you a dime for anything on Anchor. So it's absolutely free. There's also creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And Anchor also will distribute your podcast for you. Check this out. This is so cool. It's one of my favorite things about Anchor. Anchor distributes your podcast to over half a dozen different places where podcasts can be listened to. So you might be listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, whatever your podcast platform of choice is, Anchor can most likely distribute it there for you. And you can also make money from your podcast on Anchor with no minimum listenership. It's everything that you need to make a podcast all in one place. So if you haven't already, download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm to get started. Once again, that's Anchor.fm, or download the app right on your phone. It's absolutely free, like we mentioned before. And if you want to start podcasting, if you have something to say, if you want to get started with your podcast, if you already have a podcast, this is the best and easiest and fastest option that I would recommend to anybody. Download the Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm. What's going on, everybody? Happy March. Welcome back to another episode of the Make Money and Have Fun show. So for those of you that have been paying attention, you'll know that I just wrapped up February, which was Author Month. But I kind of wanted to do a little bit of a grand finale, talk a little bit more about book writing. I actually even titled today's episode, Make Your Book a Bestseller. So I'm talking to a good friend of mine today. He's a publisher, he's an author, he's a speaker. He probably does all kinds of other cool stuff too that he's going to tell you all about. But I'm excited to talk to Tyler Wagner today. So let's get into it.
My motto in life is make money and have fun. I'm on a mission to show everyone how to make money, yeah, and have fun. I'm all about making money and having fun.
I don't know about you, but every time I listen to that song, I still get goosebumps and just want to start dancing and rocking out and stuff like that. Half the time when I'm in my car, don't tell anybody that I do this, but sometimes when I'm in my car, I'll actually just go onto my YouTube channel and I'll find the full theme song and I'll just play it on repeat in my car. And I'm like, I am such a cool person. Anyway, on this note, I got to introduce you to today's guest. He's a good friend of mine. He's a publisher, author, speaker, Mr. Tyler Wagner. What's up, Tyler?
Dude, that intro is awesome, and that music definitely is the vibe. So I don't know how, because I've watched some of your interviews and I haven't seen that part before. So I was like backstage, like, this is awesome, dude.
Right. Cool. It's funny because on my screen I have like these little TV screens down at the bottom. So when I bring my guest off the screen, I can still see you down there, and half the time my guests start rocking out. You rocking out.
I didn't know you could see me, so that's good enough.
Yeah, I have two little screens at the bottom. I have a whole different toolbar here. I have all kinds of cool stuff. I can bring stuff up on screen. I can do all kinds of fun stuff with this software. I know. I actually can. You got to you point at the logo here. I'll make a different logo. There's one. I'll make. I can do a. What else can I do? I can change the way our names look down here.
There we go.
Everything's backwards.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it, and I can't.
Oh, that was the worst. Oh, I can do these too. So I can make a little ticker. So if you haven't yet, comment, subscribe, and share all that fun stuff. I can bring these are some old stuff from some of the other shows. But if you say something profound, I'll do something like that where I can bring it up on screen. So we got all kinds of cool software going on here, man. But dude, tell me about you, man. What is going on in the world of Tyler Wagner?
Just down here in Miami, having a good time, and working, podcasting. What else, man? I mean, I think that covers it pretty much.
You're living the life. Every time I text you, you're like, oh, I'm at some rooftop party, or I'm out on a yacht somewhere, or like you're always doing something.
Well, in Miami, it's not too. I mean, that's all around you, right? So you kind of have to be walking blind to not run into this things, right?
That's funny. That's funny. So, dude, tell us your story, man. I mean, you and I have chatted a little bit. We hung out. But tell us kind of who you are, what you do, and just give us the background on Tyler Wagner.
Yeah. So for sure. So I think it kind of the best place to start is probably when I was around 19, 20. So or right before there, I was in college and I read the 4-Hour Work Week. We said we would dive into the 4-Hour Work Week. I'm doing it a little early. I read the 4-Hour Work Week. And it completely just changed. What I tell people is it like equipped me with the mindset to feel comfortable with making the decision of dropping out. And one of the things in the book that he talks about is like this exercise of really figuring out when you're taking a risk, like what is the worst that can happen, and really like analyzing that instead of allowing your imagination to go places way further than is actually true. And I'll give you the exact example. Dropping out of school to a lot of people seems like very risky and like a huge decision. And it almost feels like a life and death or something. Like it's just a crazy big decision. But when you boil it down, at least for me, like my worst case scenario of dropping out was that I would just end up back at my parents', which, luckily they happen to have a pretty nice house, a pool in the backyard. Like my worst case scenario wasn't that bad. So I was like, okay, I don't see the risk anymore. I was in my head. So then I drop out. And then 6 months later, I write a book called Conference Crushing. It was about how to network at conferences and like build relationships. And it ends up becoming an Amazon bestseller. And then I'm 29 now, so this is like 9 years ago. And 9 years ago, like Facebook organically, like your reach went way further than it does now. So, I posted about the book. I would literally get like hundreds and hundreds of comments and messages. And a lot of them were either showing support or people were asking me like, how did I do it? How did I write the book, publish the book, market the book? And, really, I think kind of the main reason for that is I kind of come from a small town, an hour north of Philadelphia, near where you're at. And, people in my hometown, people had heard because I told them I was dropping out of school. So if I had to guess, I think some people maybe thought I was like going down a bad path. And then like 6 months later, they wake up and look at Facebook and I'm a best-selling author. So it's just like pretty dramatic change. And then from there, I just, I helped a few friends for free, helped them write, publish, market their books. They got very similar results to me. And now, 9 years later, we're talking, we're working together. And it's just been, I kind of fell into it, honestly, into the book publishing, book marketing business. But I'm very grateful that I did. And then I guess last thing is I have a podcast too, which I absolutely love. So I love doing interviews.
Yeah, I saw your studio out there. You seem like you got a pretty legit setup going on.
Yeah. I mean, we literally, one of my buddies, it was perfect timing. He lives up in Canada. He had just finished building like a studio based on all the equipment that Joe Rogan uses. So he actually like built out a blog post with all the equipment. And it was like right when I was going to like start to figure out like how to build it. So I got hooked up and basically we mimicked Rogan's studio down here.
It's a good person to mimic. I'm on my way up.
He's doing okay in the space.
I got one little rinky microphone here that's kind of doing its thing. Oh, I just ripped it out. Hold on. All right, there we go. This is the fun of doing these shows live.
I love it, man. Raw. That's how it's got to be. That's exactly. When I interview people and like they'll ask me to like edit some stuff out, I'm like, do you really want me to edit? And I'm not hating. I'm just saying like I think it's cool to have the mess ups. Like I think that makes it real. So
yeah. It keeps a level of authenticity. Me, I don't edit anything. Like if you listen to my podcast, like if you subscribe to it and just listen to it like in the car, you'll hear me like screw up, like I bump into the microphone and all kinds of stuff. Like I don't edit anything. I just take this footage and blast it out.
That's the way it's, and think about like Rogan, he obviously sometimes, I guess, very, very famous people, like sometimes they maybe say something they didn't need to say, or so maybe, you edit it out. I don't know. But for the most part, it's like just very improv. And like, things happen, like they'll be drinking something, they'll knock it, like just stuff out. And I feel like it just feels more like you're involved in the conversation rather if it's like really clean cut. So that's the way.
I've always subscribed to like more authentic and kind of vulnerable pieces of content than like real professional, like structured.
Yeah.
This doesn't feel as real. Like you said, it feels like you're watching like someone try to make a Hollywood production, but they're not Hollywood.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so one of the things it might be like helpful to share for the audience that I learned from Gary Vaynerchuk is the difference between like documenting and creating. And I think that's one of the reasons that people kind of like halt themselves from producing content online is they're so focused on creating that they forget that you can also document, right? Like you can just share the ups and downs of your day. And, people like to see behind the scenes and like the rawness of you as an individual. So just kind of think about that if you haven't posted in a while or you're nervous about it, just documenting your life in general. It is a post, and there's not really that much thought that has to go into that.
Exactly. So this is cool. I love these kinds of stories because I always resonate with the person who I guess didn't really fit in school or dropped out of school or kind of had a little bit of an awkwardness to school, which is kind of where I came from and where I started. It's actually funny. I'm actually editing my third book right now, and my first chapter is all about that. It's about, fitting in the society, traditional versus abnormal and that whole thing. So after you dropped out, what was it that made you get into books and book writing and all that kind of stuff?
Oh, yeah, I left that out. Good call on that. So what happened was I've always been, ever since I was younger, I've always been a very outgoing person. Was just always the guy in school that was like friends with everybody and just I love connecting with people. It's just who I am naturally. So when I dropped out of school, I was like, I think I want to be a public speaker. Like that was the first thing that came to my mind that I was like, I think I can make good money doing it. I think I'd enjoy it. I like to travel and I'll be around people all the time. So to me, it just seemed like a dream scenario. So, and then what happened, I started to go to all these conferences and I started to kind of recognize a theme. All of the public speakers that were getting paid and like were speaking at these events, they were pretty much all authors, like all the time. And most of them were like best-selling authors on various lists like New York Times, Wall Street, Amazon, whatever it might be. And then it just kind of clicked for me. I was like, if I want to be taken seriously, the root word of authority is author. One of my mentors had told me that too. But if I want to be taken seriously as like a 20-year-old dropout, which at the time I was also 80 grand in debt, like there was really no reason to pay me to speak in front of your crowd. I always make the joke, like you would be better off like paying me not to speak in front of you. Like, thank you for buying the ticket. Here's your money plus some. Now leave us. Because I just, I didn't have any expertise at that time, or I didn't feel like it. But either way, after going to like, it honestly had to have been hundreds. Like I went to so many conferences. What I did start to realize is that, and again, I think it's just natural for me, is I was leaving these events like feeling like I'd really like made a big step in my life, business, whatever it might be. And I would notice that a lot of times people would leave the events and they didn't really feel it was worth the price of the ticket. And I think the reason for that is because they were so focused on the content at the event and not actually building meaningful relationships at the event, which was way more my focus. Like I never really even thought about, it's funny, I never really thought about the content. Like any conference I ever chose to go to, it was always based on the speakers and like people I thought would maybe be in the audience, but not the content. So either way, I was getting massive value and I was like, okay, I feel kind of like an expert in this. Let me dive deeper and like research and stuff. And then I built a book that basically is like 17 principles on how to maximize your ROI at a conference. and then published it. It hits bestseller, and then it sounds kind of like magic, but it did work. I started to get paid to speak. It's just, in all reality, what took off way quicker was helping people with books. So I just geared my focus more towards that, basically.
Interesting. It's interesting. So I think I've mentioned this to you before since you brought up speaking. It warrants saying again, but I like to look at my life as if I like to call it like catalyst moments that I've had in my life. These paradigm shifts, these turning points, these breakthroughs where I kind of had like this big aha, and it kind of changed the whole trajectory of my life. So when you and I first spoke, I was in kind of a place where I didn't know where I wanted to do. I had come off of real estate investing, which I had burned down all around me basically, and watched that crash and burn. And I was anticipating getting back into it as I built it back up. But I realized, like yourself, I love speaking. I love being in front of audiences. I love being in front of this computer monitor right now. And I really liked teaching financial literacy and real estate a lot better. And when I spoke to you this one time on the phone, I forget what we were talking about, but you mentioned speaking fees. And I'm like, wait a minute. People get paid to speak? Because I always had it backwards in my head. I always thought that you had to do something incredible with your life, and then you volunteer to speak about it, and that thing that you did is what's funding you. So like my thinking was, I'll get a whole bunch of properties, and then that'll pay for me to go on stages. My rent checks will cover the fee of me going on stages. But
wow, yeah.
Once you just mentioned that one thing, it like flipped the script in my head, and I was like, wait a minute. I can actually build a career as a speaker and a trainer. And I already had 2 books at that point. And you and I were talking about, helping get the third one off the ground and that kind of stuff. And that was where like everything shifted. But then, as you and I know, this little thing happened in March of 2020 that told me it was going to be a little bit more difficult to become a public speaker this year.
Maybe. Yes, I know the thing you're speaking of.
The thing that shall not be named.
Yeah.
So what have you kind of seen, I guess, in the authoring and the speaking world in terms of where we're at today with the state of affairs?
Yeah. So conferences have definitely, I think, they've gone down. There's not as many people putting them on, and there's not as many people that want to go to them, I don't think, because, of the thing we were talking about. But I do think, and maybe I'm optimistic, but it just seems to me that you can only like stop it for so long. And there are people putting on events right now, right? And I believe, they're wearing a mask and like everything's, on the up and up, 6 feet, all that stuff. But I just think, if I had to guess, by this summer, I feel like things are going to get back to normal-ish, whatever that means, on events. And the thing that's interesting too is that and I'm in Miami, right? So I'm in like the spot where, depending on where you lean on this, right? So it's a little.
We're turning this into a political podcast.
No, it's fine. I actually don't.
All the Republicans over here, all the Democrats over here.
So it's just like, people hear about Florida and stuff and they're like, oh, it's as if, it doesn't exist and it's open. It's definitely more open, but I do think that I feel like it kind of has to do with the weather, honestly. Like, because when I went up to visit my parents for Christmas, and the governor of Pennsylvania, Tom Wolf, he shut everything down for 2 weeks. And me and my brother, we like to go to the gym and work out, so we were kind of pissed about that. But either way, it was shut down, but it was so cold. I feel like it's easier to shut things down because people don't want to leave their house anyway. Like right now, I'm looking out, you can see the sun hitting my face. Like it is literally 75 and sunny out right now, and it's like that pretty much every day. I'm not saying that in a brag. I just mean like you can't. I don't believe people would accept like lockdown. Like it's too nice out, man. Like there's just, so I don't know. In the right places, Arizona, Florida, I think events are really going to start coming back. And then in the colder places, hopefully in the summer that starts to open up, and then maybe we'll just go back to normal. But I don't know.
Yeah, there's definitely it's interesting, now that the cat's out of the bag in a sense.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. Every winter, I take a financial lull. Right, my finances dip a little bit every winter.
Okay, let's talk. Okay, go ahead. Tell me about it.
And it's like I don't know exactly why. Like, for one, I hate the cold personally. Like I am guilty of completely hating the cold in every way. We just got over like a foot of snow over here, which was loads of fun doing that. Stuff. But if it were up to me, I would live in Hawaii my whole life. Because I just love the heat. I love the weather. I love being out in the sun. I love nature, going out on hikes and that kind of stuff. And so whenever winter comes around, I always kind of have like the worst part of my year in a sense in the winter. Like not to say that things are bad or anything like that. It's just that there's always like some kind of little dip financially in the business and the career and stuff like that. And it's like, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm laying in bed longer and I'm not getting, the morning routine done. I'm staying in my pajamas all day and I'm wearing hats and all bundled up. It could be all of these little things just kind of propagated together that make it into something big at that point. But I'm with you. I think that the world is on its way back to normal. And for me, it's just been an adjustment. I'm like, okay, let's put the speaking on hold for a minute. Let's finish the book. Let's do, now I have a mastermind that's going on. I'm like, let's do some training. Let's put some masterminds together. And then, as the summer comes around, I'll probably hit you up and be like, dude, get me on stages.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, look, there's online seminars, right? But, again, I think by summer, I think it will, it's just going to be, and maybe it won't be so normal, like the whole, right. Like if you think about the book that I wrote, like, it's all about connecting with everybody at the conference. If you have to be 6 feet apart, that makes it a little more difficult to connect.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. I also think about it in terms of how can we take an advantage of this? Because I'm always looking at the upside on it. And like you said, I'm hitting up a lot of virtual conferences. I'm even doing like a weekly, I guess you could call it a seminar in a sense, a value add where I'm kind of just like, hey, I'm talking about X, Y, and Z. Come hang out. I'm actually doing one tonight at 6. So in 2 hours, hour and a half, I'm doing one of those. So that'll be pretty cool. But
yeah, for me, I think it's open. Like I've just reached out to even more people online. Like I've seen some of your episodes of this. Like you've interviewed some incredible people, and like one of the things I would just do now that, wherever you're at, things are still kind of locked down or, kind of in a gray middle area, like use this time to like reach out to people, like I reach out to like, he still hasn't responded. I've reached out to Tony Robbins on Instagram. I'm like, yo man, want to come on the podcast? Like
I reached out to Grant Cardone yesterday.
Yeah. Like why? I don't understand what people are, like afraid of with it really. It's just a question, and like you might get a yes, you might get a no. Like as you know, it happened in a different way, but I had Gary Vaynerchuk on, and like that.
I don't know that.
Yeah. So I had him on. I interviewed this woman, and then she asked me at the end of the interview, she's like, who's like your like top person that you'd want to have on your show? And I was like, I'm a Gary V guy. So she tweeted at him. He responds. And then he's like, yes, I'll do it. And he tagged his assistant, Tyler, same name as me, and literally fly out there a couple months later and interview him in his office. And like, I'm just like, things like that can happen. That's the point of me sharing that is, you reach out to Cardone. I don't know if you actually saw, but he, on his wife's Instagram story, I saw today, they got stuck in an elevator all day.
Oh, wow.
So he said he was like responding to DMs today. He literally said that. So who knows, man? Like literally, maybe. Like think about the time.
I'm gonna take a quick break to message Grant Cardone. I'll be right back.
Yeah, like I think they just got out like an hour ago because I was like watching her story and I was like they are literally stuck in.
That's hysterical. Yeah. So it's funny that you bring that up. The number one question that I get asked about this show is people always ask me about Les Brown. They're like, dude, how did you get Les Brown to come on your show? Awesome. And I always ask him, I always tell him the same thing that you said. I'm like, dude, I just asked him.
Yeah.
It's like, I just said, hey, Les, I'm doing this show. You want to come on? He's like, yeah, sure. When do you want me? I'm like, I don't know. How's Saturday?
Yeah, you got to realize it's just as fun. It just really comes down to timing, I think, right? So it's like, let's just use Grant Cardone as an example. Like at the end of the day, he's always busy if he wants to be busy, but it's also just like it's fun to be interviewed. Like it's fun to interview. So it's like there's going to be a day where he like opens it up and he's just like, today my schedule's not as good, or by that time maybe this show will be huge. Like whatever it is, reaching out, there's going to be I guarantee he'll respond at some point. Like I bet you he will.
Oh, yeah. So I reached out to his assistant and she was like, oh, this process can't be fulfilled right now. And I'm like, what are you, a robot? So it's always just, I mean, the funny thing is I heard recently this saying that like, what would you do if you stopped fearing people telling you no? Like what would you be capable of at that point? Because most people I think stop themselves before they're ready. So here's something funny talking about authoring and about books and things like that. So all month I did this little experiment and you're going to love this. Okay. So let's talk to real quick, the listener out there who is the person who wants to write a book, but never has, and they don't know how, right? They're this aspiring author. What kind of advice would you give to that person?
So it actually is in full alignment with what we're already talking about. It's what I notice with people that want to write a book is they have this mindset that the first draft has to be perfect. So, and that's what inhibits them from actually finishing it, because the process is way more artistic, in my opinion, meaning like it's messy. Like you have to write your first draft. First draft is probably going to be like pretty bad, and that's okay. But like the cool thing is there's these things called editors that will dramatically change your writing. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of similar to what we're talking about with this. Like, every day, right? Like literally my team and I do it. Like we reach out to dozens for different reasons, business and podcast, dozens for podcast, hundreds for Authors Unite stuff, of people, and basically asking them either if they want to come on the show or if they're down to collaborate and potentially do work together in the book publishing field. So like, we get a ton of yeses, but if I had to measure it, I mean, it's probably less than 50% are yeses and more are nos, but we do so much like volume and consideration on who we're reaching out to that like, even if it was only a 1% yes rate, which it's definitely higher than that, but let's just say it was 1%, we'd still be doing really well. Right. And that's what I think people need to just really consider, that it's
a numbers game.
Yeah, it's a numbers game, and it's like people are going to say no. I mean, that's just life.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I've always been of the mind that when it comes, especially when it comes to writing a book, people get in their own way. I think that we make it harder than it is in our head. And I always talk about my first book, right? I have it right here. So this is the first book I ever wrote. I mean, it's nothing crazy. And I read it the other day. Dude, it's horrible. I'm like, I opened it up. I'm like, what in the world is going on in this thing? But the funny part was I didn't do any of that stuff. I didn't hire an editor. I didn't hire a ghostwriter. I didn't hire a publisher. I did it all myself. I mean, I literally just typed it into Microsoft Word. Had a friend of mine like put the cover together. I sent it into it was actually CreateSpace back then. It wasn't even KDP at the time.
I remember CreateSpace.
Right? And dude, I mean, like literally it was so bad I couldn't even format the ebook correctly. I spent weeks, like literally like 2-3 weeks trying to format the ebook. And
you did it yourself?
Yeah, I was trying to do it myself. And I have infographics in this book. So it's like they just went like crazy. Every time I move something, they're like, oh, and it's like just like pixels everywhere. And I'm like, this is great. Yeah. And so finally I talked to them on the phone and they're like, oh, we have a service that does that for $80. I'm like, here, take my money. Just get the ebook.
I was going to say, that's what I didn't even try to do it on my own. Like it's funny. I run a publishing company. I do not know how to do that. Yeah. I have a team that does it.
I think it's, so let me ask you this question, then I'll kind of give you my opinion. What would you call yourself? Like if people asked you to give yourself a title, what do you say?
Well, I mean, I call myself head honcho.
Not to your girlfriends, like to business people.
No,
Let's get that
that's
straight.
if you go to my LinkedIn, it says head honcho at Authors Unite.
So, like, are you like a publisher, a speaker? Like,
honestly, I'd say we're more. So we do publish books, but I'd say we're more a book marketing firm.
okay,
that would make more sense. That we do a lot more book marketing.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. I like to look at you as kind of like a liaison, because I feel like, first of all, you know everybody. I'm like, if I need a connection, I'm just calling Tyler. I'm like, hey, I need like a plumber or whatever. He'd be like, oh, I got 57 of them. I got a team that reaches out to them on LinkedIn for you if you want.
I do. I was going to say that I do know some plumbers on LinkedIn, literally.
Right? Exactly. But yeah, it's an interesting model, because what I recently realized is that there's like 3 ways to achieve success in this world. The first way is to work your ass off. The second way is to throw money at it. And the third way is to create strategic partnerships with people, which is, I think, where you've kind of thrived.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that'd be helpful. So I'll kind of explain that.
Yeah.
This is something, it's actually me and a member from my team are building a whole separate like business based on this, just because we really believe in it so much. And the cool thing about it is like you don't really need money to build a business this way. You definitely need like people skills, if you will, but you don't need an advertising budget really. You don't need anything like that. So the way that I built it is, when I wrote my first book, what I noticed is that publishers, and I don't mean this in any negative way, it's not what they do. They typically don't market their authors' books. They publish the book, and then it's up to the author to do the marketing. So when I realized that, I was like, okay, well, if I like become an expert on the marketing side, I won't really have any competition. And also all I'll have to do is build meaningful relationships with publishers, ghostwriters, editors, PR agencies, anybody who works with a big pool of authors. They have an opportunity to refer to us, and we might be able to refer to them. Like, as you know, like even though we publish books, if somebody comes to us and I feel another publisher would be better for them, I will just refer them to that publisher. And literally we are at a point now, I mean, we've been at this for almost 10 years. It's like 9 years and some change, that we have in our database over 3,000 partners that either I've talked to or somebody from our sales team that we've literally had a conversation with. And not all of them have referred to us, but actually more than 50% have. And it's just crazy. Like, I wake up every day with referrals. So I just think it's a very, very good strategy that any business, if we want to go to like even a plumber, right? So let's actually talk about that. So a plumber or like a landscaper works too. I've said this on me and Jay Duran, who we were talking on my podcast a couple weeks ago. And I was like, look, I think this strategy works for any single person. All they need is LinkedIn and Google. Because if, let's just say I was a landscaper, what I would do is I would go to LinkedIn and I would find real estate agents in my local area, like maybe the closest 5 zip codes. And I would be like, hey, every time you sell a home, let them know about me, that I'm the local landscaper. I'll give you 20% commission on every deal that comes from you. And you will literally create yourself like an army of real estate agents that promote you to all of their clients, and then you'll just crush it. And I just don't think people think that way. Like I don't know. I just think it would work for anybody.
Yeah, it's really a genius way of thinking. I mean, that was another kind of slap in the face that I had recently. Actually, I had it exactly 9 weeks ago. So 9 weeks ago is when I like inaugurated, like started my mastermind. And I brought people in and I'm like, look, I'm in this position right now where I'm kind of tight on funds, and I can't really build the business using money. And it's like, I don't really have enough income to warrant like going balls to the wall into this thing. What can I do? And another friend of mine has a similar business model to yours, where it's actually really interesting. What he does is he teaches real estate investing, but he brings on other coaches. And the other coaches teach these different things. Like, one of them teaches NLP, one of them teaches financial literacy, one of them teaches X, Y, and Z, and they all take splits on each other.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's so smart. And he's like, you need to create strategic partnerships. And that was like another thing where like my mind blew up. I'm like, oh my God, this makes so much sense.
Yeah. And just to really like harp on it for a second in a good way is like it's really limitless, right? So it's like I was at a point, and some weeks it still is that way. I've just kind of I've been able to hire enough people that it's not like that really anymore. But like for years, I was doing like 50, literally maybe even sometimes 100. I know it sounds crazy, but I was doing like 50, let's just say on average, 50 calls per week with potential partners for Authors Unite. And now I have a full sales team that I basically duplicated myself, and they all do that too. So it's just like if you go to LinkedIn and type in real estate agent, there's millions. It would take you a lifetime to connect with all of them. So you have Google at your disposal where you can reach out to contact forms in people's website, which is literally the reason the contact form's there. People would be surprised to hear, like, you actually get a lot of responses from when you reach out to somebody's contact form. I think the reason is because most people never do. So when somebody gets like an email and like, hey, somebody filled out your form, they're like, what the heck? Like nobody's filled this out in like years. So like you typically get a response. And then LinkedIn, it's very similar just in responses. Like you get a lot of responses. People are on LinkedIn to do business. So, I don't know. It just every person I've talked to about strategic partnerships, most people in their mind, they just have it like, oh, I'll just have a few referral partners. Like this is my person for this. And the way I've always thought about it is like, what if you had 1 million referral? I know it sounds crazy, but like, what if you had 1 million referral partners? Like your business would just thrive without you ever having to do marketing. So
you wouldn't have to do anything. Your business would take care of itself.
Yeah. You need a good product or service, and you need partners. That's it. There's nothing else.
It's a very strategic and smart way, I think, to operate. And the other thing is this: you ain't selling low ticket products.
No.
So it's like it works on either side. It works for somebody who's selling $1 bracelets, and it works for somebody who's selling cars, houses, whatever. It doesn't matter. Just because the model is.
Yeah. So the bracelet example, because I love just saying it because like it's just so. So if I was selling bracelets, what I would do is find people maybe that sell clothing. Right, and it's like it's a complementary product, but it doesn't compete directly. And like maybe there's a chance for you to promote your bracelets to their jewelry list or their clothing list, and then vice versa. And all you'd have to do is like again LinkedIn or Google and just type in like clothing company. I don't know, like
yeah. No, I mean it's complimentary anywhere. The plumber could reach out to electricians and say, "Hey, anytime I got a whole house to do, I'll bring you along with me," or whatever. Or contractors or carpenters or it's the list goes on and on.
And then you become like the source. That's the thing, And then you're like the guy, because eventually what happens is like this is assuming you do very good work, right? Because any business that's going to do well, you have to have a good product. But eventually, like the landscaper or the plumber or the electrician, like you will become kind of the talk of the town because everybody's referring to you. Like I tell this quick, it's short. Basically, there was one time, Fred, that I had, I believe it was 6. I had 6 different people in the same week refer me the same person to do book marketing. Like that person became a client. Like very easily, So like once you build up enough of these partnerships, you literally will start to have scenarios where you get like 6 referrals to the same, and that person, by the time they're on the phone with you, they're like, dude, everybody refers you. Like,
they think you're God already at that point.
Yeah, like, it's not even a sale. That's the biggest point too. Say you're like not good at sales. I don't think I'm good at sales, honestly. Like I just have built the business in a way that like, it's a referral. So it's already trust. Trust has already been built.
Yeah.
So I just get on the call and I'm just like, hey, like, tell me what you're looking for. If we can fulfill that, then let's work together, and it's more of like a get to know each other call. It's not
exactly.
I don't know. Those are easier.
No, yeah. I mean, there's definitely third party edification is enormous. I think that people totally underestimate it in so many ways. And Russell Brunson talked about it in .com Secrets.
Okay.
He was like, oh, I'm doing all these conferences and some of the time I have a 50% closing ratio, and the other time I have 20% closing ratio. And I tweaked all this stuff and I tried to figure out what it was. And I finally figured out that it was the MC. However good the MC announced me determined like X amount of percentage of how well I do with the sales in the back of the room.
Wow. That makes complete sense. That's
right.
Yep.
And he's like, ever since then, I give MCs flashcards now. And I'm like, just literally read this exactly as it's written on the flashcard. And like that's a hard thing to tell an MC because they're like, aspiring speakers, so they like want to improvise and make it this. He's like, don't change it, just read it off the flashcard.
I wonder, I heard he did really well at 10X GrowthCon, whichever won the last, maybe it was number 3 that he spoke at. So I wonder how that went if Grant Cardone was just like, yeah, I'll just do what you say, or Cardone was like, nah, man, I'm just going to do what I want.
I don't know. I've never been to a 10X, but dude, speaking of that, I got to bring this up again. So on LinkedIn, he just posted, he's like, oh, one of the best moments of my life was speaking at 10X. And he said, like, what are some of your speaking goals, right? Was like his question on his post. And so I wrote in there, I'm like, I would love to have Russell Brunson and Grant Cardone on my show.
There you go. See, and there's so many ways, and like, I do. I just think there's so many ways to get their attention. Like with Gary Vee, dude, there was people that like did like a lot of like spoofs on Gary in like a funny way, and like sometimes it would come across his desk and then he'd comment and, there you go. Like, so there's just so many ways to get in front of people, man. Like you can do it if you really want it.
We're so connected. I mean, you can reach anybody today. That's the craziest, like weirdest thing. Like, For me, it's been like kind of arm's length stuff. Like for instance, I'd be like, oh, hey, Tyler, you had Gary Vee on your show. Can you hook a brother up? Like something like that, where it's like this, like one hand washes the other. But now I'm just like, you know what? Let me try something. I'm just going direct to the source. And it's,
No, I guarantee if you reach out to 20 people a day on Instagram, and these could be like, people with millions of followers, the blue check, whatever, all that stuff, I get 1 out of 20 are going to respond. Like,
yeah.
That's what I mean, man. How many people are you going to interview? That's 1 interview a day for you.
Exactly. I would have a problem if all 20 said yes. I'd be like, man, I got to charge for the show.
That's a good problem to have then. That we're in business.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, I mean, I love the growth process of it. I love looking at this show and it's like, wow, I have a background now. Wow, I have, all these different, distribution platforms and just like seeing how it grows. For me, that's the most fun part.
I was actually going to add, like, I think it's called Vid or StreamYard. Like, it's pretty cool what it does. I know I'm going to be nice and tan after this. Should have got better blinds, but whatever.
You're good. I actually got 2 lights on. You can't see them, but they're like right next to me, and they're like.
Yours is looking real nice.
Dude, it didn't always look like this. Watch the old episodes. There's like a bookshelf behind me and like a staircase. And like,
the bookshelf, though, that's like a lot of like influencers. The bookshelf.
But mine's not a nice bookshelf. Like this is like a $17. Bought it at Target 10 years ago. Kind of mini books. This isn't like the nice like walnut with like the plumber pipe and like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the bookshelf's just kind of like, like I read, it's in the back, man.
Yeah, it's like when you can't afford a Lambo, you put a bookshelf in the back.
Yeah. I think the bookshelf's classier anyway. So
what are you gonna do? I think it's the books that are on the bookshelf that matter. Not the bookshelf.
That's how you can tell. Yep, for real, dude. Check out those books on there. Next time you see somebody, really like pause, zoom in. What do they got going on?
It's like I don't look at pretty girls on Instagram. I just look at books, man. I'm like, look at this guy's book collection.
I've gone through phases with that, in all honesty. I've gone through phases where I've unfollowed like every girl that like I just that I find attractive because I'm like, you're taking up a lot of my time, man. Like I'm not, and then
you don't deserve this.
I'll slowly start following some back, and I'm like, oh, I'm back in the trap again.
Oh, geez.
Now we're getting out of hand.
So let's get back to business here and tell us a little bit about your company. So somebody who's new to the book writing space, if they called you up and wanted to hire you, what are some of the things that you could do for them?
For sure. So we offer a lot of different programs and services, but I guess our 9 core done-for-you services, I'll kind of breeze through them. So the best way I can describe it is we're a done-for-you book publishing and book marketing service. So if somebody comes to us and they just have a book idea, but they don't want to write it themselves, we have a full ghostwriting team. So we can ghostwrite their book, we can edit their book, and then publish their book for them and distribute it, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the stores. And then after that, if somebody, wants us to market the book for them, then we can help them achieve becoming a bestseller, which is, like what this is called. That ranges anywhere from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Wall Street, USA Today, New York Times. Actually, a campaign we did a few weeks ago also hit LA Times and a couple other lists that I really wasn't even aware of. So there's many lists out there. And then after that, a lot of our authors are not nonfiction mostly. So they have a business or something on the back end, whether it's public speaking, a course, a mastermind. And that's where with this strategic partnership that I was telling you about, we've kind of built, or we're in the process, but we're getting close of like building a program to like really help the author build their business after, right? So it's kind of like now you have your book, you have the bestseller accolade, the brand is built. Now let's like really go out there and like grow your business and start to really get some numbers on the board. So that's kind of the 3-prong process there.
Yeah, it's interesting because every time I talk to you, you're just like giving me new services. You're like, oh, I can do that. I can do that.
Oh yeah. I mean, we could like media and because that's the thing. Like I was kind of saying with like becoming the source. So it's like I don't know the exact. I think it's over 300 of our partners are PR agencies. So like when people reach out, they're like, hey, I want to be featured here, here, and here. Like the chances are I could probably make it happen just because like I'm so well connected in that world. So literally that's a service we offer. If somebody wants to be featured somewhere, I just literally, I'm like, hey, where do you want to be featured? And I reach out to my PR partners. They tell me yay or nay. Out of 300 plus, chances of getting at least one yay is pretty high. And then I'll just connect them and then, the deal is made. So it's you become really resourceful too when you build a business in this way because you just become so well connected that even if I can't solve your problem, like the chance of me knowing somebody that can is like really high.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I always used to say to like coaching clients and to people in my mastermind is like, look, I might not know the answer, but I probably know where to find it.
Yes.
And that makes you resourceful too. Because I talk to other coaches and coaches get discouraged a lot of times when they're like, oh, I feel like I can't serve everybody because I don't know X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, look, I think that not knowing something makes you more valuable as a coach because it lets them know that you're real. It lets them know that you're not, blowing smoke. And it lets them know that, you have your area of expertise and then you have your area of not expertise.
100%.
And so I always tell people that same thing. I'm like, tell them, look, I don't know the answer to your question, but I can probably find it out for you. Let me call some friends.
I'll
get back to you.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's the beauty of it. We've never lived in a time like this. We're literally connecting with people. Like imagine like back in the day, like if you wanted to talk to somebody in a different state, like you had to get on like your horse.
Yeah.
You gotta like, dude, shit would have been harder then. Excuse my language.
Yeah.
That would have been way more difficult.
Yeah, I get it. Like you got no GPS. You got to find your way there.
Yeah.
We're
talking about laying in bed on Instagram and DMing. Like, come on, guys. You can do that.
I love that. I love it, dude. It's so cool looking at basically just what you've created because it's like you said, it's so necessary in the marketplace. I feel like there's so many aspects to writing a book and getting it out there and that kind of stuff. I actually found, and you'll love this, I found a big shift in my results when I changed the question slightly. So for forever, I was talking to people and I was saying, hey, I want to become a speaker. What should I do? And everybody was referring me to speaker coaches. And they're talking about like, oh, you know, I'll teach you how to speak on stage and how to anchor it and how to this and that. And I'm like, look, that's not really where I need the most help right now. What I need help with is getting on stages. And then one day I just switched the question. I'm like, you know what? Let me ask a different question. I put a post up on Facebook and I said, instead of, you know, I'm trying to become a speaker, I put, how can I get on more stages? And literally in one day, I got 4 resources to people that all they did was book speakers. Like they don't do any coaching. They don't do any of that kind of stuff. They're just like, we'll get you booked.
Yeah. Okay. I would love to know these people.
Dude, I figured you already knew them.
You know what's funny? I probably do, honestly, but I mean that in the nicest way. Like, the chances. Yesterday, I was on a call, and this guy, we were talking about marketing his book, and he was like, "Yeah, one of my friends last week just hit the Wall Street Journal," and I was like, "What's his name?" I won't say, but he said his name, and I was like, "Yeah, that was us." Like, what are the chances? But like. What's funny is you realize, like, okay, there's so many real estate agents, there's so many people in industries, but when you build a business this way, it does kind of become a smaller world.
Yeah.
And it's just like when somebody hears your name multiple times from multiple different people, they kind of just like right away, it's just like the guard goes down. There's no more like, they're not skeptical anymore. It's just such an easier way of doing things.
Exactly. Yeah. So I know we're kind of getting close on time here, but I wanted to ask you to finish up, just to kind of hit the bestseller title of this video. What does it really mean, I guess, to become a bestseller? Is it all it's really built up to be, or is it kind of more mystique that's just like, you know, nothing behind the curtain?
No, I'll answer it for you. I mean, I think so. There's a few different ways. So
in your opinion.
No, I'm trying to. Because it's all over the place, really. So this is what I'd say. There's really 5 major lists, and I'll break it all down. So there's 5 major lists: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, USA Today, Wall Street, and New York Times. Amazon, you're still a best-selling author, but it is categorical, right? So at the end of the day, marketers, you know, they kind of ruined it because, you know, you could put your book in like the category of like sewing and sell 10 copies and hit bestseller. So, you know, look, however you want to feel about that, it is what it is. It's just the way that the algorithm works, right. And it's just kind of the way it is. So, you know, Barnes & Noble is a little bit more difficult because it's more of like a whole store bestseller, like a top 10. So that one you typically need to sell at least a few hundred in a day to hit that. Now, USA Today, Wall Street, that's when we start to get like pretty serious because you really need like minimum like 5,000 copies. There's some other strategies to it, but like 5,000 copies in a week. And like, truth be told, like even some of the biggest influence, like to sell 5,000 minimum is hard. It's hard for anybody. So when you hit USA Today or Wall Street, especially the mainstream media, they know that your book had to have performed really well. So I believe that USA Today, Wall Street, those are the ones that really open doors up for media, public speaking, and just as a brand, like it's a whole nother thing. Like if you know Chris Voss, he's an FBI negotiator. He wrote Never Split the Difference. He hit Wall Street Journal. It's the first thing on his Instagram, Wall Street Journal bestseller, as his titles. And then New York Times. What's interesting about New York Times is it's the only one that really isn't based on sales alone. So it's actually, there's the criteria is like way too long to even explain, but it is, you know, you have to be with a traditional publisher. We did one a few weeks ago and our client sold, I think it was 21,000 books and he hit number 8 on the New York Times. So like it's possible. And my last point, I just wanted to kind of give an explanation is like, I believe it's how you leverage it, right? So the reason, you know, we do our sales calls and it's more about going over expectations. In all honesty, like we have some people, you know, they pay us, they want to become a bestseller and it's very much an ego thing, right? So they just want to put bestseller and on their socials and then they don't do anything with it. Oh, that's fine. Like, no, you know, you do what you want to do with it. But if you really want to grow a career and leverage it, I believe it's kind of like it's kind of the best branding tool ever. And a great example of that is Russell Brunson. He literally is the founder or co-founder of a $100 million company. If you go to his LinkedIn, I think it's on his Instagram too, the first thing it says is New York Times bestseller. The second thing it says is co-founder of ClickFunnels. So he literally weighs like New York Times bestseller above like ClickFunnels in a sense, right? As far as a brand goes.
Sure.
So yeah, to answer your question, I don't mean to go. It's just I feel like it really depends on how you leverage it. Like that's what I'd say. So when me and you were talking like public speaking, mastermind, like you have a back end infrastructure in mind, and you're not afraid to reach out to people. Having that bestseller status next to your name, I think that's going to get you more DM responses. I think as a brand, it's going to build trust easier. Like my life story is it, right? Because I was 20. I was in debt, but I was a best-selling author. So people took me seriously, in all honesty, maybe even if they shouldn't have, you know what I mean? So it's like,
yeah,
it's a game changer if you use it correctly.
Mm-hmm. I totally 100% agree, because it's funny for me being in the book writing side of the wall, essentially. It's like the mystique has kind of gone away for me, especially with Amazon. Amazon's almost like I talked to somebody once. He's like, that's like, telling somebody you're going to sell a car, but it doesn't come with brakes if you're not an Amazon bestseller. Like, it's like stupid to not be. I'm like, that makes so much sense at this point. But like you said, in your eyes, in the eyes of the public, and in the eyes, most importantly, of event producers, if you're trying to become a speaker, to them, it's like, the Wizard of Oz. Like, you got this whole big thing going on. And I think that, yeah, absolutely. It all comes down to what you end up doing with it.
Yeah, 100%.
Which really makes total sense. Dude, this has been awesome, man.
I know.
I'm so excited having you here. I told you I didn't know what we were going to talk about.
Dude, I didn't want to know, man.
I love it. So real quick, to wrap us up, how can people get in touch with you? How can they reach out to you? What do they need to know about you?
Yeah. Two best ways, like Tyler at authorsunite.com. That's my email. Website's authorsunite.com. And then Instagram DM. That's probably quickest way just to get a response. And that's Tyler B. Wagner, middle initial in there, because there's a baseball player, Tyler Wagner, that has all my stuff. So
I hate when that happens. I hate that.
Man. He's the first on Google too.
What would you like to leave our audience with? Words of wisdom, encouragement, advice, or just anything at all?
Yeah. All right. So I don't want to. Hopefully this doesn't drag out, but I was talking to Jay Duran earlier.
Dude, you're
today.
the one with the time crunch, not me.
I know. So I do. I have a call at 5. So basically, I was talking to Jay Duran earlier this morning, and like we were just talking about how like if you can like look at all your work as like a piece of art, then like your life and your work becomes way more meaningful. And what I was talking about is like, because I do a podcast, as you know, and I for the longest time, like I always enjoyed it, but I didn't see how valuable it actually was, and like how artistic it was to be able to have like a long form conversation like this, like off the cuff. But now that I see how meaningful and valuable it is to myself, the interviewee, and the people listening, I now look at like every interview like this, like a piece of art, and like I go all in on it. Like I don't hold anything back. It's pretty much all off the cuff, and like I just be as raw and honest as possible. So either way, I just think if you can start to adapt that into all of your working tasks, your work becomes way more fun, becomes way more meaningful, which then in the long term, obviously more money, more relationships, whatever, the end result is. But I think it's just a cool mindset shift. Instead of being like, I need to do this, be like, dude, I'm interviewing this guy today, and like this is literally a piece of art that is going to be on the web forever. So
I love that.
Yeah, with that.
That's awesome, dude. That is so exciting. I love that. Life, everything that we do is a get to, not a got to.
I get to, yes.
Brother, I love it, man. This has been awesome.
Thank you, man.
Talk to you again soon. Dude, I want to be on your show next.
Yes, we will do it. We'll schedule.
All right. Sounds like a plan. Everybody else, we'll see you again very soon.
See you, bro.
Have a good one, guys.